Yeah, I think it's those questions about life and also those questions of maybe I I don't feel good today, or maybe I feel like something's off. And I think that was one of the things she mentioned. I love the way she said it. It felt like one of those eat, pray, love signs, but she said pray and
Oh yeah.
PT. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that could be you could copyright that, but it was true. She was talking about spiritual and physical, and I think that's a big part of knowing yourself. Like, what are the things I need to do to get back to center, or to take care of myself when maybe I don't feel great. And I love the way she phrased it.
Welcome to the On the Path podcast, a conversation on navigating life. Join Chris Coker and Colin Creech as they have honest conversations with fellow travelers on the path. In each episode, they explore the physical, mental, and spiritual health aspects of the whole self, striving for personal accountability and a strong community. Gain insights, learn from our mistakes, and hear from guests who have mastered these areas. Step on the path, embracing every challenge and success along the way. See you on the path.
Feels good, right?
That's my
Um,
first ever clap, Colin.
oh, we're keeping that in, but we have an awesome episode today, everybody. Just so you know, Chris and I do claps before we start. It's good for the mic checks, but that's not what we're talking about today. We just finished our episode with Antoinette, and it was a fun one, honestly. Like, it was an emotional roller coaster in the best of ways. There was, some very serious moments, emotional moments, but also she's also just a great human. And there it was some good laughs too, especially a part we edited out, but we had a Wi-Fi meltdown. I don't even know whose it was, but part of the fun.
That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things I love about this show in particular is that, like, everybody listening, everybody watching, what you see, this is just real life. This is how we operate and how our guests operate, and the guests that we bring to you. So and I agree. I thought it was a really fun conversation. And I think a debrief is a good moment to call out. Like, I'm starting to notice trends too. Like, with everybody we talk to, there are certain like red threads that are showing up in multiple conversations, which is encouraging to see.
Yeah, I think it's those questions about life and also those questions of maybe I I don't feel good today, or maybe I feel like something's off. And I think that was one of the things she mentioned. I love the way she said it. It felt like one of those eat, pray, love signs, but she said pray and
Oh yeah.
PT. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that could be you could copyright that, but it was true. She was talking about spiritual and physical, and I think that's a big part of knowing yourself. Like, what are the things I need to do to get back to center, or to take care of myself when maybe I don't feel great. And I love the way she phrased it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about that phrase, so prayer and PT, it's
Yeah.
it's hitting all of the big pillars that we talk about all at once. Like in the episode she talked about, like, obviously prayer, right, sits squarely in spiritual, but the PT part, she mentioned that it's just as much for her mental and emotional health as it is
Hmm.
for, for staying in shape, right? And so for her, like, this idea of coming back to center, she's able to mentally come back to center through this practice of prayer and PT as well. So I thought that was super good. And I imagine that everybody we've spoken to on the podcast so far has a version of that, where there's
Yeah.
some sort of like spiritual or mental like centering that they go through. And then there's also like this physical piece, even if it's just going out and taking long walks or doing
Yeah.
cold showers or whatever, there's some sort of like physical and physiological benefit that they put themselves through. So but that was a first for me. Prayer and PT is not one that I've heard of yet.
Yeah, and I think that's also, I mean, to your point, does everybody have something that they do to get back to center? But it's also a part of getting to know yourself too. There's that relationship with yourself. Okay, what do I really need right now? Is it
Yeah.
I mean, I was about to say what I love, but like a tub of homemade vanilla ice cream, or is it actually I need to go on a walk or something? And so I think mine will be prayer, PT, and ice cream. But I do
And
think a big part of it is that relationship with yourself, getting to know yourself, so you can have that honest conversation. I feel like it also makes it a little easier too when you're like, oh, I'm having
yeah.
a day, but I know after this I'm going to go do that. And and these self-care things that I have found by getting to know myself, and I know what helps me get back to center. So it was great
Yeah.
to hear her say that, especially because her life, I don't know how she does everything she does. I was texting her today as we were going live with her episode, and she's on the other side of the world. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
what time is it? How does she do it all? I do not know.
Yeah. That explains why when I commented on my way to the gym, I do early morning workouts, and I like commented on it when I saw it on social media on my way to the gym, and she immediately responded. And I was thinking to myself, like, Antoinette, you're in California. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, but I'm glad to hear that she's on the other side of the world. So for her, it was normal time, but it's funny to hear
Yeah,
you
probably
say that.
evening. Yeah,
So
opposite side of the world. Yeah.
where is she at?
Dubai. I don't know if it
Oh,
was a
yeah.
layover. I didn't ask more questions. That I was like, that makes sense. That checks out. It
Yep.
checks out with her.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I think that
And it
just
makes me
goes.
think like
Go ahead.
one of the other like core concepts that she brought up, and it's actually one that I've heard before. So this a lot of folks now will say like there's no such thing as work-life balance, but it's really work-life harmony. Like how do you get these things? Like balance doesn't exist because you're never going to get this perfect like 50-50 blend of work and life. But how do you just create synergies so that it feels like you're just thriving all of the time? So how do you find this work-life harmony? And I think she whether by design or by happenstance, like I think she does that really, really well. She's found a way to blend her work, and she's integrated that very deeply into just how she lives her life, right? There's the community pillar is a huge one for Antoinette. And that just like that fills her cup. Like when she talks about the community, that's a part of what her business does, but it also is something that like kind of gives her energy too. So I think she's kind of a poster child for this concept of work-life harmony, which I don't know about you, Colin, but that the very concept of that resonates with me. I mean, I have a busy life here on the home front. I also have a full-time job, and then there's also on the path with you, and you're in a
Which
very
is your
similar
favorite
situation
part
yourself.
outside of your family?
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, like, life and gigs.
there's a harmony of the three. There we go. It's a safe answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, I mean it really does, because I know we've talked before, and you've even had some injuries, with your physical fitness pursuits, which, just so you know, it's always something extreme with Chris, very safe, but also it's not just I'm going to go to the gym. It's some sort of heavy lift or CrossFit or jujitsu. And so the injuries, which I'm glad are, hopefully you weren't limping, so I think it's good. But it really does. It's that like listening to yourself. It's like, okay, do I really need to push it, or do I need to focus
Yeah.
here? Like I'm going to be out of town next week for work. Do I need to spend more time with my kids? And I think you do a really great job of it, because you also hold yourself accountable. And then there's this community
Yeah.
that you're talking to. If you haven't met Chris, he is Jack, is the best way to put it. There is a lot of muscle with respect to his wife, who's an amazing human. Honestly, though, going back to the episode, I just think that, one, she talked about the insane hours she works, but two,
Yeah.
she really didn't make it seem like work at the same time, because of just the passion she has for what she does, and serving her community. And she really, mentioned, it made me think of our Eric Ballister episode, but like fills her cup is what came
Yeah.
to mind.
Yeah.
Is that's what keeps her going and gives her
Yeah,
energy.
for sure. And I think the tactical one for me, like the takeaway there, that since having that conversation with Antoinette, I've kind of thought to myself, like, where do these seemingly disparate parts of my life, right? Like my job and my business, for example, like where do those two things actually overlap a little bit? Like where are the experiences that I'm doing on this podcast with you overlap with this job that I have, or my marriage, or my kids? Like, and what's interesting, Colin, is like, since kind of reflecting on that concept of work-life harmony, this idea of balance kind of across all different pillars of my life, uh, it's actually pretty easy to spot where there's opportunities to leverage one to improve in the other. And I think that kind of is giving me a little bit of energy
Yeah.
too, where I can say like, oh, like there's an opportunity for me to, I'm on here practicing the ability to be a conversationalist. Like how helpful is that in the space of corporate America, like being able to talk to people about anything kind of on the drop of a dime, right? And so I think that for me was kind of the tactical takeaway that I've been able to use in my life recently is identifying areas where the experiences that I'm gaining in one area of my life positively affects another area of my life.
Which it actually makes me, think, because the work-life harmony point is still like, it's a great way to look at it. The balance is, it feels like you're getting shorted when we're there, but it's harmony, right? You have to flow with it. But there's a
Yeah.
part that I'd love to hear, what your thoughts were about it, where we talked about all these things with Antoinette, but she talked about one of the things that's really important for her is setting the example for her kids.
Mm.
And I know that's something, it meshes nicely with this conversation because your kids are watching. So what did you think
Yeah.
of that part of the conversation and how this all fits together?
Love that part, by the way. I appreciate the question. I mean, my hat alone, for those
Dad
of you
gang.
that are not on watching the video and you're just listening, my hat today says Dad Gang. And I don't know if folks have noticed, but I
It
oftentimes will
also
go out of
says
my way.
designed by dads. So,
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And there's a, if you know, on the
uh, and
side,
I don't know, but yeah.
but you get it. Um, and so anyway, like I go out of my way I'm a very proud dad. I love being a dad. I think it's so much fun, and yes, I wear a lot of dad swag because it makes me feel cool. But when she mentioned this, setting the example for my kids, first of all, that's another red thread. We got a little bit of that from Bill Journey in his episode. We got it with Eric Ballister. We got it with Wael Adami. Like so many people we talk to, if they have children, this is really core to their DNA and how they operate in the world. And I think for me, where one of the lessons I've learned in recent history, and you know what, Colin, I actually think you and I had a couple of conversations about this early on, which is, yes, you have to set the example for your kids. You also have to engineer the opportunities for them to see you be that example, right? So like, an easy one that I can give you is like reading, right? Like if I read every night, which I do, but I don't read until all of my children go to bed, then their perception of me is that I don't read because I haven't created that opportunity for them to see it, right? Or I told you a long time ago about kind of one of those failing moments I had as a parent where I had told my oldest, like, don't come to the gym with me. I need that's me time. That I was not taking advantage of such an incredible opportunity for him to just watch me in my element. I've been doing some form of physical fitness my entire life. And I may not be a professional athlete, but I have decades of experience in all sorts of from like combat styles of fitness, different types of fighting that I've done over the years, to high intensity interval training, to like Olympic lifts, to everything in between, like running marathons, like rich experiences that I've been able to now share with my son because I said, you know what, I'm going to be the example and let him witness that. So for me, like, I just kind of wanted to build on this point
Yeah.
that we had with Antoinette, which is like set the example for your kids and then create the opportunity to be the example so they have the opportunity to witness that.
And I remember that was a really, hard conversation. We've had many of those. It goes both ways, but
Yes.
I will say this, something you say you didn't bring up, and you have like a wonderful family, but your son, when I visited, was always talking about mindset. And we laughed
Yeah.
about it, but I was like, I wish I knew what that was when I was his age. But I think,
Yeah.
You're a great example for him of what that mindset looks like, and that it's not perfect. You were just talking about that situation, but like, no one's perfect. And also back to Antoinette, she talks about that. She talks about, how life is messy. It's, she does an incredible job. She serves, but it's also, there's a lot of emotion with it too. And so it's not perfect. It's also very hard sometimes, even if you're living into your purpose, which I think that's actually probably a great part to close on. We've heard so much from Dr. Free on the importance of purpose for both men and women,
Mhm.
but then it's such a strong driver for her. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your perspective on that too, because there's a theme here, but also when you see somebody that's, got such an impressive resume as she does, but also just gives her whole self to her family and the organization she works for, it it it's a lot. But I feel like that purpose is such a big driver
Yeah.
that you can't explain or measure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that for me, having that conversation with Antoinette, the piece that really stands out when we think about purpose, her desire to serve others, her desire to help her community is so tightly linked to empathy. right? Like, and for everybody listening, if you haven't heard the episode, you have to go back. Like, there are a couple of moments in that episode where Antoinette, you could tell that she's feeling her answers like deep down to her core. Like, she really has empathy for these people that need help, and that sense of like that outpouring of love that she exhibits in her work life, I think is so important when it comes to living a life of service, either her time when she was in the state guard to then helping veterans, through Vets Legal Institute. Like, there's that linkage of empathy and service. And I think that for her, and this is, my perspective on it, but I think the linkage of those two things has created such a profound sense of purpose in her life. And so it just has me thinking a little bit, Colin, around like, that's, when we think about purpose and how to grow it in our life, like we have to kind of find that synergy of like how we're going to be able to add value back into the world, but then that deep sense of desire to do it because we have that sense of empathy or that sense of compassion for those that we're trying to serve or that we're trying to help. So, yeah. Her purpose is very, very obvious, and I think it shines through that link of service and empathy.
Yeah, and I think I'd love to end it there, but also plug Veterans Legal Institute if that's okay with you. It's vetlegal.com, and they provide pro bono legal assistance to homeless, at-risk, disabled, and low-income current and former service members to eradicate barriers to housing, healthcare, education, and employment, and foster self-sufficiency. And again, that's vetlegal.com. Vet is VETS, vetslegal.com. And again, just she's the co-founder of the organization, and obviously, who she is, it's just, espoused, I feel like, with that organization as well. And if you go to their website, they do have a donate button, and again, you're not obligated to. I know we have global followers, but truly making a difference in a community, and it's amazing. So any closing remarks on your side?
No, just if you haven't had a chance to go listen to the episode, let this be your cue to go and do that. For everybody out there, as always, we very much appreciate your viewership, your listenership, and your support. So thanks. And Colin, as always, it is a pleasure having a conversation with you. And to everybody else out there,
I'll see you on the path.
we'll see you on the path.